What's up, mi gente? This is Stephanie, and I have hijacked our podcast. Gladys is not here today, but we are presenting a special episode today. I am going to be sharing my story in a little bit more depth. I know that I actually shared some of this in my first podcast when we did initially introduce ourselves. And so recently I've seen more posts on Facebook from other people who have attended this church here in San Antonio called Xtreme Harvest Church. It is led by Pastor Brian and Kia Ayala, and I actually spent time there very close with them and the leadership in that church. I served as a worship leader for almost 5 years, and I started going there when I was 19. So from the age of 19 to the age of 26, I was heavily involved in this church and this ministry, and was the worship leader from about 21 to 26 when I left. I lived with Brian and Kia on and off during that time and saw things within the household that just seemed weird. I grew up in church, in the Assemblies of God, in the Pentecostal realm, and I had experiences with the Lord early on in my life. I had been baptized, in the Holy Spirit when I was like 11, I think, was saved at an early age, and already had a foundation with Jesus before I ever went to this church. And I believe that's what saved me in the end, to come back from what I went through in that ministry. And so this episode is me sharing my experiences and what I went through and why I left Xtreme Harvest Church in the end. And I hope that it encourages other women who have gone through similar situations, and that when you felt stuck and when you felt depressed and when you felt like nobody saw you because of what you went through, that you hear my story and that you see that it's possible through Jesus that you can come back from that and you can be better than you thought you could be. So with that being said, there were things that I saw within the house, like I said, when I was living there that just seemed weird. There were times where Pastor Brian would stay locked up in his room. I didn't understand why. I just left it. Maybe he was praying. But there were times when his children that he had, I saw his son, cry for him outside of his bedroom because he wanted his dad. And that I didn't understand these things. And I witnessed him and his assistant go at it many times within the house. And there was even times where I was, I don't know, I just, like, for example, there was a time where they took my information for the CPS bill and that money just never got paid. Like, that bill never got paid. Things with the finances within the church didn't seem right. And this was early on in the years of that ministry. Fast forwarding, like I said, I was just naive. I was very gullible back then, and I assumed that this pastor he's just a man of God. He heard from God, and I trusted his decisions. I trusted his words. I trusted everything that he said, and I just wanted to belong in this place, and so that was the connection there. I wanted somewhere to belong, and that he took me in, and so he became my spiritual father. That was the labeling for that. And that allowed me to be comfortable enough to, share things with him. And I always felt closer to him than with Kia, even though I knew Kia when I was young. Like, I knew her from when I was a teenager. I thought she was so cool back then. But, when I was living with them, I was always more closer with Brian at that point. There was a period of time when I was the worship leader. There was strife within their marriage. And, like, I don't know the details of all of that stuff. I know that there was issues where Brian was speaking with ex-girlfriends and things like that in Fort Worth, and that was told to me through emails that he was conversing with people on Messenger and things like that, with past relations, women and stuff like that. And so after we had lived in several houses, but we were in Seguin at that time, living in a house on a street called Escondido, which is a little bit that's ironic because he was trying to hide. And Escondido is hide in Spanish. So he they ended up splitting up. Kia went to Austin to be with her friend. She had a friend that lived there. So she was gone for a few months. And during that time, I was actually living in my own apartment. And I had moved out of the house with them and then got my apartment. And for whatever reason, Brian needed to borrow my car. And I had a little red Matrix. I love that car. And that was like my first brand new car that I had gotten for myself. And I was very proud of that. And I had, for whatever reason, he needed to borrow it to go to Fort Worth. This was when they were separated. Kia was already in Austin. And I didn't know why. He didn't really explain, but it just seemed off. So he came to my apartment where I lived at by myself. He came up the stairs, and the apartment was kind of like like one of those studio apartments. So there was not really any like rooms or anything. It was just like my bed and then the couch. And I was sitting on my bed and he was sitting on the couch. And after we talked for a little bit, he finally was about to leave. And as I'm walking him out the door, he kissed me on the cheek. And I thought that was really weird. But I just let it go. So 2 to 3 minutes later, I hear a crash. And I'm like, what happened? And I went outside and he immediately crashed my car, backing it up from the parking space and hit like a cement pole or something. And I was just taken aback, like, what the heck? First of all, the kiss was weird on the cheek. Second of all, you just crashed my car. Like, it just seemed off. So like later on, I was like, was that a warning from God for what was about to come next? Yeah, it was. I take it now that it was a warning. So that was one incident. Another incident that happened was we were leaving the church one day, and he insinuated that that I would end up somehow with like a short man. He is a very short man, and I'm a tall lady. And so I thought that was weird too. I was like, why are you telling me this? This is just weird. No way. Then another incident happened where we were at the house on Judson. That was off of Judson Road and 35. And we're sitting on the couch, and I was sitting there in a ponytail with no makeup, and he was kind of venting and saying, I wish that I could just meet somebody that, that just looks pretty, just with no makeup on, and could just have a ponytail, and just describing like how I look exactly sitting there in front of him. And the whole time I'm thinking in my head, like, this is so weird. Like, why would he say that to me? Because I had self-confidence issues at that point. Like, I didn't think I was pretty or anything like that. I really just didn't understand or know when somebody was like hitting on me. I thought that was weird. So these isolated like events like just kind of just seemed off. And it led up to the point where I ended up moving back in the house with them, into a house with them, on 1604 in Bandera. And in this house, Kia was still gone, and he actually hit on the owner of that house. I found out later because we became Facebook friends. And I was just like, I again brushed it off as, well, he's separated from his wife. He can do what he wants to do. Like, I don't know what, I can't really say anything, so I didn't say anything. So that was that. And then we moved all in together. It was him, myself, his assistant, and the kids. not all the kids, but um, that was who was living in that house. Another incident that I just thought about was I was in my room I was in my bed. I was in my room alone, and he came in and he laid right next to me, and he held like my hand like kind of like this, and I thought that was weird. Like, why are you in my bed? Why are you in my room? Um, so different things like that happen. So kind of fast forward a little bit into really what led me to finally leave. Was Kia finally came back. It seemed like they were, gonna make it. They're gonna make it work. So she ended up getting pregnant and had their baby. Around this time was when they were having a conference in Ohio, and as people know, his covering is Rod Parsley, World Harvest Church in Columbus, Ohio. So we would frequent Columbus for these events that they had. It wasn't Dominion Camp. It was just a smaller, like pastoral kind of gathering that they were having, and he wanted to go. Because the baby had just been born and there was really nobody else that could attend with him. I was asked by Kia to go and attend with him because he needed another driver, another assistant. I was directed not to say that we were going by ourselves. Duh. So we went on this trip, and I just took it as like I get to spend time with my pastor. Like I get to spend time with him. We're going to go on a road trip. And then just more weird things were happening. He started to play secular music where he played Beyonce's Surfboard, and he was like, "Do you know what this song is about?" And I'm like, "No." And I'm sure people know like Beyonce songs, and what that's about. So keep in mind that I was a very late bloomer. When I say I grew up in church, my whole intention as an adult was to stay a virgin until I got married. That was my plan. And so I didn't have any kind of sexual interactions or anything like that with anybody until actually right before all of this happened. And that was with somebody else. That was from somebody with high school. So that was something that I was struggling with, and he knew about it. And when we were in Ohio, I just thought of this, just came to my mind too. When we were in Ohio, when we finally got to our destination after a bunch of weird events happened, the rim ended up cracking when we were driving in Tennessee, and I hit a pothole, and it ended up cracking. We had to get the vehicle towed to the nearest airport, which I think was Nashville. Got the vehicle towed there, and then ended up renting a car to make it the rest of the way. So it just felt like, looking back, it was kind of just like, I was like, you shouldn't be going here. You shouldn't, whatever. But we ended up making it to Ohio. And when we were in Ohio, he didn't have enough money to get 2 rooms. So we ended up staying in 1 room, and it had a pull-out couch and a bed. And I told him, you're, as thinking in my head, he's the pastor, let me offer him the bed. He's like, no, you can have it. I'll sleep on the couch. Well, that didn't happen. He ended up staying in the bed too. And then the first night, because he knew about my relationship with this guy from high school, I remember he took my phone and he messaged this guy who still to this day remembers this because he was so taken aback because he really thought that we were going to be together. Pastor Brian took my phone and he messaged him and said, "Hey, I'm her pastor and I'm her spiritual guide, and you need to not contact her anymore," basically in a nutshell. So he messaged that to this guy, and the guy messaged back and was just like, "What? Like, what's going on?" And so I kind of talked to him, and I was like, "I can't talk to you anymore. Like, my pastor said this, and like, it can't, we can't continue this or whatever." So that was weird. Because why are you messaging my whatever? So that was the first night. The second night was also weird because well, when we first got there, another like sign was I started my period. So I was like, dang it, dude, like it just came out of nowhere. Like that was another sign, like what the um but regardless of that, the next night I remember falling asleep and I woke up and things were happening. And there was there was kissing and touching. It did not go all the way to full intercourse in that first occasion, but there was definitely all of that what I just said. And I was taken aback, and I after the completion, I just kind of was kind of just feeling sick. It felt like spiritual incest. Like it felt like this is disgusting. Like I didn't know why he would allow this or he would do that. And I immediately, well, I'm not gonna say immediately. While we were there, still laying in the bed, Kia called him, and I could hear the baby in the background crying, and he was, just playing it off like nothing literally had just happened. And I was laying there just not knowing what to do. Like I didn't know what to do. After they got off the phone, I got up and went to the shower, threw away the clothes that I was wearing because I just felt like they were just so disgustingly stained, and I literally threw everything in the trash. When I came out, all he did was say a simple prayer of repentance and moved on. Well, I literally had no idea what to do from that point. I didn't know how to navigate this. I didn't know how to um I just didn't know what to do. Like you can judge me all you want and say, "Well, you should have said something. Well, you should have did that. You should." Well, you know what? You weren't in my position. And I really like I don't really care what people judge me if at this point. But that was the first incident. After we came back to San Antonio, we had service the following day, and I was still the worship leader behind the piano while he was preaching. He preached a word, and he twisted everything up, and the enemy didn't want us to get there, and even the rim cracked, and and all this stuff happened that tried to prevent us from getting there, but we got our word, and da 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 da, and we brought it back for you, and the whole time I'm thinking, dude, that was God probably trying to keep us from what just happened. So, um, this there was four separate incidents. That was the first one. The second one would happen in the house. It was a morning after everybody left, and I was in my room, or it wasn't. It was one of the kids' room, but they were not there, so I was sleeping in her room, and everybody was gone. And during the Ohio time, I this is gonna be a little weird, but when we were in Ohio, I never saw it. Okay, never saw it. It was under the covers the whole time, and I told him I'm glad I didn't see it because I didn't want to have the picture of that in my head. I told him that. And this particular incident, while I was in the room that morning, he came into the room, he laid down next to me, and he pulled it out and said, I want to make sure that you see this. And I saw it. And I'm like, the heck? And so that abruptly didn't do anything. I just saw it. And one of his elders, I won't mention their name, but they came to the house and he saw them from the window, and he got dressed and he walked out. That was the second incident. The third incident would happen again in the house, as we were sitting downstairs, and the downstairs living room was pretty big, and they had a really big sectional, and then upstairs was kind of like a loft area. And so we're downstairs, me, Brian, and the baby. And I'm sitting on one side. I'm laying down on one side of the couch, and he's all the way on the other side. And he says, Mia, can you come rub my back real quick? And I'm like, okay. So I go, he has pain or something, start rubbing his back. He grabs my hand and he moves it to it. He moves it where he wants it to go. This whole time, his wife is sitting upstairs in that loft area. Did she know what was going on? I don't know. But he finished, he cleaned up, he threw it in the washer, and I felt disgusting again, and I went back to the other side of the couch and I turned over and I just kind of folded up. Like I didn't know what to do. That was the third incident. The fourth and final incident would happen not too long after that. And all of these happened within 4 to 6 weeks. It wasn't a very long duration, a long period of time. Because I couldn't, there was no way that I would be able to do this for any longer than what it did. So the last incident, he was apparently going through some things. Obviously, we all saw it. He had some issues with drugs, and the reason that I can say that confidently is because I found, things in his room. Now, mind you, I never went into their room when I was living with them. I never walked in unannounced or anything like that. I respected that privacy for them. Like I never did that. Only on maybe the one or two occasions where Kia asked me to come in and to hang out or whatever. Before I get into the final incident, there's two other things that I want to mention about the drugs, because he would disappear for days on end when Kia wasn't living there, when she was in Austin, and it was just me and the assistant living there in the house. And there was one time where I had got fed up with it. I was like, I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't know where he's going. Like, this is just weird. And I ended up following him. He took off with the backpack and he started driving. And I got in my car and I followed him. And the assistant, she asked me like not to intervene or like get into like basically like just leave it. Just let him do what he's going to do. And I was like, no, like why should I? Anyway, so I followed him. We were living on 1604 in Bandera at that time, and he drove all the way to Pier and Vital and 410. He exited Pier and Vital right across from where the Chachos is, but like on the inside of the loop. And he went to an Exxon, and he went to the payphone that was there, which was super weird because this was like 2014 maybe. So like who uses those, like the payphones? Like, like it was just weird. He had a cell phone. I thought that was weird. And I confronted him and I was like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, why are you following me? And the whole conversation from what I remember is just like, don't worry about me. I'm fine. Everything's going to be okay. Go back home and I'll meet you there at the house. And so I took it as like, okay, I mean, all right. And we hugged it out, and then I went and I left. But he was buying drugs. And then the next time, going back to the bedroom situation, he was gone for maybe 2 days. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go in his room. I'm going to see if I find anything. So I went into the room, didn't look too much in the bedroom, but I went into the restroom. And as I'm looking in the restroom in the cabinets, I see like Smirnoff bottles, alcohol, beverages, things like that, everywhere in there, underneath the cabinets. And I went into his actual closet area because it was like the bathroom, and then there was like the closet within the bathroom. So then I went into the closet area, and keep in mind, like, again, I was very sheltered. I don't know what drugs look like. I never seen crack cocaine in my life. I've never seen like a spoon used for that. But I knew what it was when I found it. So it was the spoon with the white residue on it, and then the lighter right next to it. And I took it to the assistant. She was there in the house, and I said, "This is what I found. What is this?" Um, Basically just asking her to handle it. Like I didn't know what to do. So I handed her the spoon and the lighter, and she took it from me, and she's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." And that was it. I didn't get any other explanation, no follow up, no nothing after that for that. So, as far as the drugs, he did use drugs during his time in ministry when I was there. Another thing that I just thought about was he was actually working at Johnny Carino's. I was trying to think of the Italian restaurant that was right there on Bender in 1604. He took a job as a server there at Johnny Carino's, and he told me his on his Facebook he had a picture of himself, but he swapped it out for like a general image because he didn't want people from Johnny Carino's to know or to find out that he was a pastor. So he swapped out the picture so people wouldn't find him so easily when they searched him up, because obviously like he was doing stuff there too. So um, the drugs, the alcohol, the sexual innuendos, and all of that stuff was happening while he was pastoring Xtreme Harvest Church in the time that I was there. Now, to the final incident that happened that just went all the way this time, was a night that at that time I was working at T-Mobile, and at this point I had already moved back into my parents' house and moved out of the home with Brian and Kia. Kia had already came back, and like I said, they had the baby and all that stuff. All this stuff in Ohio happened. So I moved back in. I thought it was best just to go back to my parents' house. And while I was there one night, Kia reached out, and she, like I said, Brian was going through stuff, and he needed somebody to, go with him to Corpus. It wasn't odd for us to all go to Corpus for like an overnight trip, or like a day trip or something. We would always frequent Port Aransas together, like all of us as a group. But I'd never been with him alone. But because Kia reached out and was like, "Can you go with him?" Okay, cool. All right, fine. So my mentality was that, hey, I felt chosen. I felt like, oh, he wants to hang out with me. And so he came and picked me up from my parents' house. And the thing that I was not expecting was to open the door. He had like an SUV. I don't remember if it was like a Tahoe or an Expedition, but he's always had these big, huge vehicles like that. Or if it was the Tundra, it could have been the Tundra at that point. But I opened the door, and when he was younger, in the testimonies that he shares, that he was an ex gangbanger as a teenager, and that's how that's the gist of his testimony, that he came out of that lifestyle and then became a pastor and got saved and all that stuff, right? So during that time, he went by the name Casey. That was his middle name. That was his like street name. It was Casey. So I opened the door, and he has a cigarette in his hand, and he goes, "Tonight I'm Casey." And I was like, ugh, okay. So I got in the car, and instead of going south 37, he ends up going north 35. Corpus Christi from San Antonio is south 37. Austin is up north 35. Never in my life had I been to 6th Street up until then, and never will go back. Never have gone back since then. That road trip that night did not end up as a fishing trip. It ended up as a night out in Austin, Texas. On our way over there to Austin, he stopped at an Applebee's, and we had a drink. I had a Patron. I was drinking Patron. He was drinking. I think he had a shot of Patron as well. And from then we left. I asked him for a cigarette when we were in the car, and we went to 6th Street. So as we get to 6th Street, he parks. Again, I've never been there before. I don't know if he had already been there. I don't know if he was familiar with that, but he seemed to know where to park. So we parked, got off the car. He told me to leave my phone in the car. So I left it there, didn't bring it with me. And then we started walking. I forgot my ID in the car, and so I stayed where we had walked a couple blocks already. So I stayed where I was, and he went back to the car to go get my ID, and then came back. We started kind of like bar hopping down 6th Street, having more drinks, dancing, and as I mean, we were there until 2 in the morning when it shut down because everybody was walking out down the street by the time we left. So as we're walking out, I'll never forget there was this lady that was right there with her Bible preaching, and I was under the influence, and of course I'm walking by and I see her preaching, and I'm like, yeah, he's a pastor, he's a pastor. And he's like, stop, and he pulls me and he's like, shut up, and pulls me out, and walks me to the car. So we get in the car, ended up having we get in the car and I give oral sex to him in the car. Then from that point, he decides that we're going to get a hotel. We go to the Red Roof Inn off of 35. They're in Austin, Texas. Actually, we went to one location first and they were all booked. So he wanted to find a room. Went to Red Roof Inn. There was a room there. We got the room. And then that's where the final incident happened. And that led all the way. After that happened, then is when I finally saw him cry and break down. I am completely under the influence at this point, just trying to console him. He's crying. I don't know what to do. He throws up on my pants. Luckily, I had some extra clothes in my backpack, and I was able to change. But I remember he was like, we need to go. He was crying. I knelt next to him and I was like, I don't know what to do, and I wanted to just pass out. That's how drunk I was. I just wanted to pass out. I just wanted to sleep. But he got me into the car and we drove back to San Antonio. I think we stopped like at a McDonald's or something for food or something. But I passed out in the car, and the next thing I know, I woke up and I was back at my parents' house. So he drove all the way back to San Antonio drunk, and got off of the car, and I was I didn't there was no words for how I felt in that moment. But when I got out of the car and I closed that door, that was the last time that I would not see Brian, but talk to him about anything. That was the last time that I would talk to him. Since then, I have seen him, at different events. I still had mutual friends that went to the church, and we went to like birthday parties and stuff. So I would have to see them, but I would loathe and hate that I would have to, I wanted to be there for my friend, but then I also knew that was a pastor, and I just didn't, it just became too much. After the incident happened, the next day, I had to go to work to T-Mobile, and I had like a late shift, so I was going in at like noon or 1 or something, and I had got a text message from Kia, and she was asking, did y'all make it back safe? Where's pastor? Da, da, da. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm already at work. And I just left it at that. I don't know anything else that happened as far as like their conversations or anything like that. I was at that point, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. This is not, I knew that it was not right. Um, but he wasn't stopping it. Like he wasn't saying that it was wrong or he wasn't talking to me about it. It was just happening. So I'm sitting on the porch at the church, and at that time we were still on Warsbach renting that back. I think it was a Baptist church. Um, and I'm sitting next to Kia, and she's just like, I don't know what to do. He's just been acting so crazy, da da da. And I couldn't bear the guilt. I couldn't do it. So I messaged her and I asked her later, I guess it was like later that day or maybe the next day. And I messaged her and I said, hey, can you meet me down the street? I need to talk to you in person. We need to talk. And so I met her down the street from the house on Bandera, and we met in a parking lot. She had the baby in the car with her, and I got out of my car and I got in the passenger seat of her vehicle. I wanted to do the right thing. You can, like I said, you can judge me all you want, and say that I should have done that from the beginning, but this is the gist of it and how powerful somebody's manipulation and how their words can twist you to just do what they want. But as I got into the passenger seat with Kia in the car, just broken down, I told her woman to woman, like, hey, um, I had relations with Brian, and he needs help. Like he's going through something. He needs some help. And I don't know what to do. Now, I wasn't expecting her to, console the woman who just said that she slept with her husband. Like I wasn't expecting that. Um, but I also wasn't expecting what she said. So her response after I told her was, "You need to leave. You need to leave the church. Do not contact him. Do not contact me. Do not contact anybody from the church, and do not return." And so I was basically casted away. Like that. I he seemed to have gotten all the assistance and the help from the leaders in his church. I heard that the men went to visit him in his room and, like kind of prayed over him or whatever and tried to get him out of what he was dealing with or whatever. And I left. I contacted the assistant immediately after speaking with Kia, and I told her, hey, I need to get my piano and I need to get the rest of my stuff from the church. This is what happened. And I told the assistant what happened. And her response to me was, why didn't you come to me first and tell me I could have gotten you out? Insinuating that I shouldn't have exposed it this way and I shouldn't have handled it this way. How else is this situation supposed to be handled? Why would I go to the assistant of the pastor when the wife is the one that needs to know? And anyways, that's neither here nor there now. But those are like these are my thoughts now looking back on it. So she helped me get into the church. I got my piano. That was my piano that I had bought with my own money, and took it with me. And from one day to the next, everything that I knew was gone. The assistant helped me get into the church. I got my piano, I got my stuff. So yeah, that was it. So from one day to the next, literally lost everything that I knew about my life until that point. Keep in mind, I started going to this church at 19 years old when I was just starting my adult years. And so the entire time in my adult years, this is all I knew was this church, these people, and yeah, I remember the next day I was back at my mom's house in my room on the bed looking up at the ceiling. And I just asked God, like, what am I supposed to do now? Where do I go from here? Everything that I've known is gone. It's gone. I have no idea how to pick up. Like, I had no idea how to pick up from that point forward. Why did this happen to me? Why was I the one that had to endure this? Why was I the one that had to go through this? And the narrative that was later told to me, that Brian and Kia presented to their leaders, was that I was the one that seduced him and caused all of this to happen. Um, excuse my language, but give me a break. That's such BS. For somebody, for anybody who knew me back then, I was the most shy, timid, gullible, had so many self-esteem issues, just why would somebody like that seduce seduce a pastor? Like, it just didn't make sense. So that was the narrative that they presented to their leadership as to why I had to leave. So I had to navigate from that point forward by myself. I didn't have any counseling. I wasn't directed to any like other ministerial staff, or refer to any counseling or anything like that. Like this, it deeply impacted me, and I had to figure it out on my own. I didn't have anybody else to lean on. I did have a friend at that time who I was still friends with after that, and I kind of talked to her about it, but she ultimately decided to stay at that church. And we stayed friends for a few years, but up until actually maybe 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, is when I had to cut ties basically with her and the family and her family, because I couldn't understand how I couldn't be friends with somebody who saw me in that light and believed it. It just seemed very two-faced to me, and I couldn't do it. Even though she said that she separated her feelings about, whatever happened between me and Brian from her attending the church, that still didn't make any sense. So, I didn't, like I said, I had to navigate this by myself. Brian was given the instruction by another pastor here in San Antonio. It was like a sister church under the Fellowship Ministerial of World Harvest Church. And that pastor basically told Brian, you need to sit down, I think he sat down for maybe 4 to 6 weeks. And that is, if they only sat him down for 4 to 6 weeks, and it took me 11 years to finally get to this point where I'm like healed and, doing good, I don't think that there was much restoration done in him during that time. Especially now, seeing that a lot of other people are coming forward and speaking out against what they've seen recently. Now, this has been a decade ago that this happened, that I left. And to hear people come forward and say their stories and what they've seen and what they've witnessed, to know that this kind of stuff is still happening, it's concerning, and it did provoke in me to want to share my testimony and share my story and share these details, because there needs to be accountability. There needs to be a call to accountability for this so-called pastor, who really has no covering. Um, he can say that all he wants, that his covering is Rod Parsley and World Harvest Church, but really, what kind of accountability do they provide in states away from states away? There's no auditing of the finances in that church. We never knew where the money was going. He always boasted that he never took a salary from the church, yet he would show up in new suits, new cars. Um, we somehow we always got into a new house. Don't ask me how we lived in. I can remember 5 different houses that we lived in when I was with them. And people coming out now it's given me the courage and the courage to just finally tell my story. And I know that there's going to be people on both sides of the fence, because I've already seen it, that are coming up. There's people that have reached out to me via messenger and stuff, saying that they went through similar situations that I did, and that they're concerned for their daughters that are currently in that church. And I want to tell you, get your daughters out of there. There should be no reason for this man to have so many close relationships with young women, young girls. I had to navigate a lot of my own issues after that happened. And I went through a time of deep depression. I was suicidal. Like I said, I didn't understand why this was happening, why I had to go through it. And from that one trauma, that led me into, I'm just going to kind of quickly go through what happened after that to where I am today, because I believe that that's important. And I need this to encourage those that are watching, because Brian is not Jesus, and Brian is not God. And people follow him like he is a God. And the hurt that I experienced in that church was so deep, but it wasn't because I had the foundation that I already had in Christ. I knew, I questioned whether God was still with me. Yes, I did. But looking back on it now, from where I am today, I know without a shadow of a doubt that the Lord was always with me, and that he brought me out of that. Because I could have ended it. I could have ended it. I could have just made it go away. Let's say that. But after that happened, I lost myself. I had a year of I got my apartment, and I was, sleeping around. I had no value, no self-value. And that's how some of you guys know about my other testimony, which was my son, who came after that. And I thank God that he gave me my son, even though it wasn't how I planned it. Because that whole situation, I didn't know I was pregnant. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was already 8 months, and I didn't have time to prepare. And I had thoughts about, like, what if I do get pregnant? Do I have an abortion? Things like that. And I think God saved me from having to make that decision. And I'm thankful that I have my son. Because after I had him, it gave me a purpose. It gave me a purpose to live, and it gave me a purpose to continue after all of that.
And so I was living at my parents' house, and this was pandemic was right, coming around the corner, 2020, 2021. And I still was struggling in my faith, and this is God with me. And like, when I found out I was pregnant, or when I found out about my son, I had Corey Ashbury's CD on the entire time that we were in the hospital. And he's saying, He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. Oh, how He loves us. And oh, how He loves. And I know that God never left me. And I know that He was always with me. And the journey would continue as I, tried to find a church, and, would I ever serve in a church again? Would I ever, be comfortable in a church again? Because I had no trust for leadership at that point. I tried to go to a friend's church, and I did not want to get close to the pastors. I did not want to get into leadership. I wanted to stay far away from any type of church leadership as possible because of what I had went through. And then in 2023 is when I had started. I wanted to get out of my parents' house, and I wanted to get a house for me and my son. At that point, I was a single mom. Obviously things happened with his dad, and I ended up was blessed to buy my house as a single mom on my own with my son. That was a big accomplishment for me, and I don't take it for granted that the Lord He was in that. And I got my house. Over the next couple of years, in the next few months, I got my health in order, which was a big priority for me because I'm the only parent to my kid, and I want to be around for him as long as possible. And I started my business as a side hustle while I was still working from home. And then this year ended up quitting my full-time job and trusting in the Lord, and made that decision to take the leap of faith and go full-time in my business. And the Stephanie that you see in front of you today is completely different from the Stephanie 10, 11 years ago, or how when I was 19. Oh my God, it's almost 20 years ago. Oh Jesus. I'm just not the same person. And I'm not scared. I'm not fearful. I'm not worried about what people might say about me, or how they may twist this video, how they might twist my words. It doesn't scare me. And I believe that all of this happened at the right time. And I give God glory for that. Everything that has happened in my life, I can look back on all of those incidents now. And as a whole, in its entirety, I thank God for it, because it's made me the woman that I am today. It's pushed me into this direction of self-discipline, and doing what it takes to build a business and be there for my son and do what it is that I need to do. And I get that strength from the Lord. I get that strength from Him. I can't do it on my own. And so somebody needs to just be encouraged that even if you think that it's gonna go bad, it might go bad for a little bit, but you need to trust in God and not in the man. You need to trust that the Lord has you, and stop trusting in a man, in a nutshell. To kind of wrap things up, I do want to read this passage of scripture that I found recently. I was pretty shocked when I read it. It's in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. It says, "But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unloving, unholy, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And from such people turn away. For of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives of gullible women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of truth." When I read this passage, when it first came across to me, that was literally me. I was very gullible and I made every excuse in my mind for the weird things that happened that I didn't understand, because I believed that he was the man of God. Like, he was, God, used him, and he was the pastor, and we had an obligation to cover him and protect him at all costs, no matter what happened. And that went to the far extremes of even trying to protect him in what was going on to me personally there at the end. And so for the people who are still currently attending his church, this is a personal testimony of somebody who not only was in leadership at the church, but lived in the house with this family and with this man. None of the leaders ever reached out to me to ask, if I was okay or how I was doing after that. And no accountability was ever set for him. I'm good now, guys, just to let you know. I'm all good. But I do not believe that Brian Ayala is good. I believe, from what I've read on other testimonial accounts of people that have been to the church more recently, that he is not good. Don't believe that he should be a pastor of a church, that he should be leading a flock. And I definitely don't believe that this church should be open at all. If you still attend that church and you're a leader there at that church, I would urgently ask you to check your heart and see, like, why are you not holding this man accountable for all the accusations set against him? I can give you all the details of every encounter that I ever had with him in living there, more than what I've given you in this video. There's still so much more. But for the sake of time and, just getting this message out there, hold that man accountable. Do something. Don't let this happen to anybody else. Don't let him be alone with your daughters. And if there's anybody out there that needs to talk to somebody, like, I'm here. If you're going through this or went through something with Brian, or even if it's another church, I'm sure that this is not the only place and not the only church in the world that this has happened to. And I'm here. I'm here if you need help. If you need somebody to talk to, reach out to me. But that is gonna be it for this video. I pray that it provokes change, honestly, a significant change. But God bless you guys. We will see you on the next one.